Today, we're going to get into two big beauty scandals that have been all over our feeds recently. And honestly, both of them are about the same thing at their core. Who gets credit, who gets protected, and who's left holding the bag.
Today, we're going to be talking about Patrick Ta versus Painted by Esther, as well as the leaked labs with the lipstick lesbians. Let's get into it.
Welcome to GlowJob, the beauty podcast that's more than skin deep. We're the only podcast to make you hotter and smarter.
Okay, so first things first. If you're not familiar with Painted by Esther, aka Negoziademe, we are going to introduce you to her because she's honestly probably one of the most interesting and celebrated makeup artists online right now.
So she's a London-based makeup artist, and she has honestly worked with so many iconic faces. I kind of think her muse is Alandria from Love Island, but she's worked with Naomi Campbell, Sweetie, Tyla. She is really building out this impressive resume. She's collaborated with so many brands, teaching masterclasses with Danessa Myricks. But what she is most well known for is this blush technique called transition blush. And it's really become her staple. When you see this blush look, you know immediately it is done by Painted by Esther.
And so here is what the look is. It's this dramatic gradient blush look that extends up into the under eye area. You know, it's super bold, it's vibrant, but crucially, she developed this look specifically for those who have deeper skin tones. Because oftentimes blush, it feels like it's treated for people with only like one certain type of complexion. And that generally is a lighter skin complexion.
Yeah, I feel like we see online so many creators of color oftentimes complaining that like, hey, this blush is not pigmented enough or it looks way too chalky on me. But she gained so much virality from all of these gorgeous looks and showing that like, yes, people of color can wear blush. And I think this is where all the drama came about because she was famous for this transitional blush look. And then Patrick Ta dropped his own line of transitional blush and people had a lot to say about this.
So Patrick Ta drops this transitional blush collection, and it's essentially two products, right? So you have a palette that is two-toned, that's a powder, and then there's a liquid product. And so you're supposed to use both of these products together to create that gradient, dramatic blush look that extends from like all across your cheek.
Yeah, you know, when he first launched it, I was a little bit confused because he already has kind of similar products. Like he has so many liquid blushes, so many powder blushes, but really the way that he was describing it is like, this is how you get that gradient that blends from your concealer to the blush. So it's kind of like that middle piece that really captures that under eye area that Esther is so well known for. So when people were looking at all of the images from this launch and the images that Esther creates from all of the work that she does, people are just sitting and asking like, is he copying her? What's the difference between these two looks?
And of course, the internet got pretty mad. Honestly, there were several dozen, if not hundreds of videos online of fans who accused Patrick Ta of copying Painted by Esther. And people were also mad because presumably he was stealing this technique from a person of color. And people were saying that it's not just a similar technique, but it really looked like if you did a side-by-side comparison, it was almost like a copy-paste.
Yeah, you know, and it actually took a little bit of time for Esther herself to come online. But we pulled a quote here because, you know, when she did post her TikTok, she opened it with something that was like, you know, pretty honest and sincere. But she said that she was really nervous to make this video. But I don't like being scared to say things because you know how easy it is for them to, quote, angry Black women us. So, you know, this is why she really took her time in the response because she wanted to be cognizant. But so many of her loyal community definitely had her back here.
And so then Esther, she laid out the receipts and she had a whole timeline. Essentially, there were multiple kind of weird sus encounters with Patrick Ta's camp. So the first interesting detail was a rather suspicious booking with the co-founder of Patrick Ta, Rima Minassian. So at first, it felt like a routine glam appointment. Until midway, it felt a little bit more like reconnaissance. Essentially, Rima asked Esther in the middle of the appointment if she could start recording the glam session.
And you know, when I first heard about this, like I didn't think it was that strange upfront because I feel like a lot of times when people book a makeup artist, they want to create content for it. So they want to film the session so they can make their own stuff afterwards. But allegedly, like she had specifically asked to basically only film the blush portion.
So basically asking to document the technique?
I guess so. But at the same time, obviously she wanted to see this in person and get it for her team. But Esther is super generous and teaches this technique with so many different brands. With Danessa Myrick, she did one with Kosas. She's been pretty well documented. So I get what Esther is saying by it seemed sus.
Yeah. But at the same time, like you said, sometimes during glam appointments, you like taking content and also to teach yourself. But understandable here that this woman runs a competing makeup brand.
I'm sure she didn't think it was weird at the time, but it was after the product launch and she's like, oh, this is why you wanted to record this specific segment.
Yep, putting two and two together.
Exactly.
And to add fuel to the fire here, when Patrick Ta released the promotional video for his transition blush collection, people were very quick to note online that he was using almost identical verbiage to a video that Esther had posted where she was talking about her transitional blush technique. Literally, they were line by line, they were kind of copy paste.
It's actually insane how much research the fans of Esther went in and actually they were detectives here. It's kind of like that joke about how, oh, if you want to find out about a guy, don't ask the FBI, ask your best friend.
Yes.
Right? They were literally doing that kind of research. Because they had even found these super old posts where in the comment section, Patrick Ta would say things this blush is giving painted by Esther, or this blush is a la painted by Esther. But clearly he had known about painted by Esther. So I get why people were a little weird and angry.
Yeah, lots of receipts here.
Yeah. And then there were some other things, because what happened next was people had discovered that Patrick Ta had filed for a trademark for transition blush. And immediately everyone exploded because they were accusing him of trying to erase Esther. They're saying that, oh, only now Patrick Ta is the only person that can use the phrase transition blush.
And here's the thing, there's a bit of a misconception here because I don't think everyone understands how trademark law works. Basically, when you file for a trademark, you have to file for a class, meaning what category your trademark is going to live in.
Exactly. It's not a blanket. You literally have to file for specific things that only you can use.
Exactly. And so for this example of transition blush, Patrick Ta's team filed a trademark for the class of beauty products, cosmetics. So essentially what this means is that Patrick Ta, the company, is the only company that can name a beauty product transition blush. Another good example here is Pillow Talk. That is a trademark that the brand Charlotte Tilbury owns. So no other beauty brand can name one of their beauty products Pillow Talk.
And we'll see what happens in this situation. Obviously, this trademark is still pending. So yes, no one else can start using it. And yes, no one else will be able to use it if they actually give him that trademark. But people were really upset about this, even though they might not have entirely known what the trademark officially means.
And just when you thought this story had enough layers, both the Kevin Aucoin estate and MAC Cosmetics entered the chat.
Yeah, so Kevin Aucoin, R.I.P., legendary makeup artist. He created every single glam moment from the 90s. He literally wrote a book on it.
Yes.
And it was this book in 1997. It was called Making Faces. They literally documented the technique of transition blush. And his team basically said Patrick Ta doesn't own it. Painted by Esther doesn't own it. Technically, Kevin Aucoin doesn't own it. It's been around in the zeitgeist for years. But they did give Esther a lot of props for really mastering this technique and popularizing the technique.
Kevin Aucoin, he was the first one to publish it, really kind of putting it into the mainstream so that it's a recognizable technique.
Yeah, he even had a product for it, but they used to have, I think they still sell them, but these gradient blushes. So it literally has the light to the dark shade and it's one singular poured powder. But who knows, maybe he should have filed for the trademark way back when.
All right. And then of course, MAC Cosmetics enters the room. And so MAC, right after this scandal, they actually tapped Painted by Esther and Esther's favorite client, Olandria, to do a campaign together to celebrate this transitional blush look. And this was basically MAC's way of saying, hey, we acknowledge you, we recognize you, and we're trying to celebrate you guys.
Exactly. And write her a big fat check.
Yes.
Because I think the thing that people were so upset about with Patrick Ta is they were accusing him of trying to capitalize on a Black woman's work without compensating her or acknowledging her. So Obviously, that is incredibly problematic. I think across all industries, there is this deep-rooted history of, and I'm thinking of like Daniel Bernstein specifically here, but just like big companies and big brands ripping off small artists. And it's even more of a slap in the face when that artist is a person of color. But, Patrick Ta, he does have a little bit of a history. And I shouldn't say Patrick Ta, it's like Patrick Ta's company, but a little bit of a history having issues with that community.
So let's take it back 2 years ago in 2024. There's a creator named Avonna, and she goes online and starts breaking literal makeup palettes from Patrick Ta on a video. And she says that she is no longer going to remain silent because it's been a really, really long time. And she essentially was never compensated for the work that she produced for Patrick Ta's company. And so she says that because of this, she is boycotting the brand, that she needs to let the community know because of this. And by the way, of course, Avonna is a woman of color. She's a Black woman. Eventually, Patrick Ta himself releases a statement. He apologizes, expresses tremendous remorse, and states that the payment was a oversight by his finance team. And then he says that he actually reached out to Avonna directly and made sure that she was fully compensated.
That is a very challenging conversation to have, though, because I think so much of like creators and compensation, there is this huge narrative that Black creators and creators of color make significantly less, right? So they're constantly having to do the same amount of work for less pay than, let's say, like the Alex Earls or the Feelong sisters of the world.
Unfortunately, I feel like this is a pretty common experience in general. I mean, like you and I, we've had to chase invoices before, running GlowJob, as a small business. It's not uncommon, and sometimes we have to get pretty firm with vendors or people. So we don't know exactly how long is quote unquote a long time not to get paid by Avonna. But, I will say that sometimes, honestly, companies are really bad at paying invoices, and it's really crappy for people like us or small creators. Not even small, just creators in general.
Yeah, because I think that maybe people don't realize that like companies, they have so many expenses. And if it's just a creator, that is a very small line item compared to the overall budgets that a finance team has to manage. So not defending Patrick Ta in any way, but understanding that things can slip through the cracks. But, I think part of the reason why so many people were so angry about this transitional blush scandal is kind of like the second time he has had issues with this community under the same kind of vein of he's not paying Black people what they're due.
So Patrick's response to all of this was that he let out a statement and basically said that he acknowledged Esther is the one who popularized this look, and that his team had also allegedly reached out to Painted by Esther trying to do a paid collaboration, but it was something that her team turned down.
Yeah. And then basically she turned him down, and he's just like, okay, well, I'm still going to launch the product that I've been wanting to launch. And it's hard because who owns creative IP like this? I think that's a larger conversation because Patrick Ta has kind of been the leader in the blush space for years now. So I don't think it's too much of a surprise that he's actually going to launch more blush products because he's kind of tapped out. Like, how many shades of his existing blush does he already have?
Right. Like, how many more blush styles can you do? This is the part where like IP conversations to me get very nuanced and interesting because I understand as an artist, right? Like your technique is so much of what you're selling, what you're putting out there in your portfolio. But again, when it comes to trademarks and copywriting things, there's a limit to what you can actually say is yours and what's defendable as yours.
Yeah. And, there's actually another makeup artist that I absolutely love. I will not shut up about Nina Park, but she is an icon. She is doing everyone's makeup, like Greta Lee, Emma Stone, Margot Qualley, like all of the it girls of A-list celebrities of today's generation, right? And her iconic thing is this blurred lip look. Mm-hmm. You could argue that her blurred lip has equal, maybe less, maybe more, but it's as well known as is Painted by Esther transitional blush. But there have been so many brands, like Violette FR, for example, who have launched blurred lip products, but no one's saying anything.
Right. I know that becomes an interesting conversation of like, okay, both of these examples here, Painted by Esther and Nina Park, have literally popularized techniques, aesthetics, styles. And then when other brands copy them, like, I guess my thing is Why is it that one creator can get this kind of outrage and then the other one doesn't?
That's a super fair question. And I don't know the answer. But, I see these blurred lips everywhere and I just don't see Nina Park getting mad. I also don't see her doing collabs with like Violette FR. Like she has her own brands that she's collabing with, just like how Painted by Esther has her own brands that she's collabing with. But it's just a weird cultural phenomenon thing about like how certain stories get picked up and interpreted and become viral.
As we're chatting about this, like I can see the through line when it comes to Black creators and makeup artists. Like there's definitely a historical mistreatment of those communities, of a Black community versus like other minority groups. And so I think like that could be a big reason why this story in particular with Patrick Ta is getting so much traction.
I think that's super fair. And, it's not his first run in creating issues with the Black community. And here's just to hoping that there's no third time around that this is going to be something that he has to deal with.
All right. So that was scandal number one. Patrick Ta, that whole thing was about who gets credit. But this time, scandal number two, it's all about trust. And this is what happens when you spend years building trust and then fumble it with a really bad product launch.
Yeah. So we're talking right now about the lipstick lesbians and leaked labs. So if you've been on beauty TikTok at all in the last few years, you know who the lipstick lesbians are. It's a married couple. Their names are Alexis Androukalis and Dr. Christina Bazayas Androukalis, and they review so many products. And they have a lot of industry insight into beauty, product creation, ingredients. So they've become like the experts in what a good product does. And they do a great job. Like they make a lot of money working with big brands and doing these collabs, but they also discover a lot of smaller brands and, help them kind of get their start. But what they decided to do is after all of this years of research and building this community, they wanted to launch their own company called Leaked Labs. And the idea here is that they are going to leak products that apparently no one has ever seen before and see if people actually like it. They're going to release it in small batches, test it, get live feedback. And then if it's good, they're going to keep rolling with it and kind of launch it out on a larger scale.
So in theory, the whole point of this is that the most innovative products never really make it to the market because one, they require a lot of R&D. Two, there's a lot of risk because you never know if consumers are going to be into it. And so because they're doing these smaller batches and testing it with like people who are like truly beauty lovers, it allows them to work at scale to do these kind of like fun launches, right? Where like you get to literally try out a new product. And then if it does well, they're going to release it in a bigger batch.
And, even before they launched, people were accusing them of being gimmicky because a lot of people, they were like looking at their kind of business and marketing plan and just saying like, oh, so are you using us as free testers? Because you're releasing products that like, haven't been tested, don't have that like general buy-in of whether or not this would actually be useful.
So that leads us to their debut product launch, which was the Amplify Flexi Powder. So this was essentially like a disc-shaped water-activated pigment disc. So many words. Essentially, it basically was like this funny, like squishy thing that you could put eyeshadow on your skin. It was a really weird product.
So when I looked at them, all I saw were lunchable meats. They're the same size and the same kind of texture as a lunchable meat. And you can either like pick it up and rub the lunchable meat powder on your face, or you can like use brushes, you could get it wet. Like, so you could use it dry, right? If you wanted a more like light powder look, but if you wanted like a more amplified glitter effect, you put this on. And it came in like 4 shades, all different types of glitter. But
my issue with this thing is that this was essentially a petri dish for bacteria because there's no hygienic way to apply this thing really. Like presumably you could use a brush and like kind of do that. But the whole point of this being innovative was that it was a fun, malleable product that you could like apply with your fingers. Your hands are constantly touching this thing. I don't know how you would keep it sanitary.
I guess you spray it down with alcohol. Not my favorite, but it was just a product that like one, nobody wanted. 2, nobody really knew how to use. Because also when you're picking up the powder, like imagine if you wanted to apply blush and you just have to like apply it like that. Like it's not super, again, hygienic, but it's not the best like user experience is also what a lot of people were saying.
Right.
But when this first launched, it sold out. People just scooped it right up. And then all of a sudden you see all the backlash videos coming out online of people not enjoying the overall experience.
You know what's something I thought was really funny about this launch? So, there were a lot of consumer review videos where they were like, WTF is this? I saw a lot of industry folks, who are probably quite friendly with the lipstick lesbians, who were trying to toe the line of being like, this is so innovative, but also being like low key, not totally getting the product, but they wouldn't outright say that it was like a flop.
Yeah. And I get it. They're friends with these people, right? They've probably worked together for years now. They probably run into them at the parties and, everywhere in the scenes. Like how many times do we run into the same 4 people at every single event we go to?
Like 10. There's like a rotating group of 10 people we see at all the press events and influencer events, all that stuff.
Yeah. So it's like, I get why they wouldn't want to be like super critical outright because they're also small business owners. They're also just getting started. And yeah, I don't know. But the critical videos were really critical because other things people were saying was like, every time you use it, since you have to pick it up, every time you use it, technically the product shrinks, right?
Yeah.
You're using it. So it like disintegrates over time. So what started off as like lunchable texture turns into like fruit roll-up texture. And then you're just like, what are we doing here?
My issue is also the transfer, right? So like if you have to pick up a product with your fingers every single time, not only is it one, I keep going back to the unsanitary bit, which just really gets me. But 2, it's constantly rubbing off into your hands. So like you said, you're losing product every single time you're using it.
I guess so. But like, okay, to be fair, like, do you ever apply product with your hands?
I do, but that's like a direct transfer, right? Like I'm using my finger as the brush without those lunchable meats, as you like to call them. Like you are grabbing it to then apply it. So there's like a 2-time contact, right? You have to physically pick it up and then apply it onto the skin. So there's 2 times where transfer is happening. So you're losing more pigment.
You are losing more pigment. I don't know. Maybe were they trying to make a critique on the packaging industry?
Maybe. Secondary packaging, yeah, it wastes a lot of material. And so I understand that. But also it exists so that way things can be sanitary.
They can be sanitary. They can be easier to use. They can be easier to store with the rest of your makeup. It's like the user experience part that I think they miss out on. I think they probably thought that like, oh my God, have you ever seen a flexible piece of powder before? And people would say no. So like, let's launch this. But I don't think they thought about the other things that consumers equally care about, like how pleasant the experience is.
Yes, I agree. If you're going to make this kind of flexi disc thing, I was just thinking about it. The only place that I would want to use it would be on my cheeks. So like a blush, that's the easiest use case. On an eyelid, it's so hard because there's a crease. Like there's just too many dimensions versus the cheek feels like at least you can just do a quick swipe.
Yeah, I don't know. This one, their first launch to me was a little bit half-baked. And eventually they realized that it was half-baked because they released a formal apology to everybody and offered refunds to every single person that purchased the products.
That is huge to offer refunds. That means like they really realized, oh gosh, this is not what people wanted.
Yeah, they realized that they effed up.
Yeah.
But who knows? They're still going to be launching more products. I think that this time they'll probably try quite a bit harder.
I hope so. Because in theory, it is a really fun, cool concept, especially for like true beauty lovers, people who are like really into the beauty game, innovation, like they want to experience something new. That's like a big draw of doing something like this. But, sometimes innovative products don't come to market for a reason. And I think that's what this flexi disc thing just proved.
Yeah, there's a reason why things get tested over and over with multiple focus groups. But I think a lot of what they're also trying to do is like Korea, for example, is like incredibly innovative. And there are things that are now super common here in the United States that before was like weird. So I think maybe they're trying to be like on the forefront like that for like a cushion compact, for example. Like I feel like that has been in Korea for years now. And when it came into the US market, people at first were like a bit hesitant, but now everybody loves it. Everyone has a tear in their bathroom.
Exactly. But my counterpoint to that is your tier has a nice little cushion thing that it lives in.
It's hygienic.
It's hygienic. It's super hygienic compared to this thing. I really can't get over the sanitation part because like we know how much bacteria can grow in a little, especially if it's wet and activated. Oh God, the germaphobe in me is like freaking out.
No, it's super valid. That is a very valid point. All right. So that's a wrap on today's little segment. We went over 2 different scandals, 2 different companies, 2 different situations. But really what the heart of it is just like what happens when a brand does something that's against its promises and values.
Okay, GlowJob fam, that is a wrap on our beauty scandals. But stay tuned. Now we have a really fun interview with Alanna Tran, founder of Biotech Beauty.
Enjoy.
Alanna, I have to talk about your hair because it looks so good right now.
Thank you. Thank you. I started trying the gloss that Madison Beer says that she uses, and I was like, let's give it a go. It works so well. So it's the Redken gloss, which as you know is like kind of a salon professional grade, but you can buy it on Amazon, put it in the shower for like 5 minutes, rinse it out, and it just gets really glossy.
Wait, so I am like, Sauce already knows this. I am the worst at hair. I just don't do anything to my hair. So I don't, what is a gloss?
So a gloss deposits this gloss on it. And so it's going to help kind of weigh down a little bit. If you have any frizzies, it's going to help reflect that shine. And so your hair just looks a lot healthier.
Okay. How often are you using it?
I use it once a week.
Oh, once a week?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Okay.
It looks super
good.
easy.
It looks really good.
Thank you.
Like you did your own hair today.
Yeah.
Wow. It looks like pro.
Oh my gosh. Thank you. Just
Doesn't
a
it?
little
I know.
barrel.
Yeah.
Thank you guys. That means so much because I've listened to a lot of the pod and I know you don't love to do your hair. I'm the same way. I feel like it's the worst part of my routine and I just don't know how to do anything differently. I don't even know how to style it except for these curls. But I guess I've got it down because everyone's like, wow, your hair looks so good. And I'm like, okay, I know how to do one thing. And I'm glad it works out.
You nailed it.
Thank you.
I'm jealous of this shine situation.
thank
it just
you.
looks like your hair's so healthy.
Thank you. The studio lights definitely help as well.
Doesn't hurt. So you are the founder of Biotech Beauty.
Yes.
And your whole origin story has a lot to do with your personal journey around acne.
Yeah. I've had acne ever since I was in middle school. And kind of the natural progression is let me put on makeup so I feel better about myself. I can go to class and not feel like I'm hiding. But the makeup would always make me break out even more. And it was this terrible toxic cycle. So when I was in college, I was pre-med. I felt like my love for science was, just the natural path was to go into medicine, just like both of my parents. And so I was studying that. And while I was at UC Berkeley, I knew that I loved science and research, but I started to feel like I don't really see myself in a hospital. I want to help people, but I want to figure out a way to do it that feels a lot more like me. So I actually called my dad. I had like a mental breakdown. I was like, Dad, I don't see this working. I really love what I'm learning, but I don't see myself doing clinical rotations and working in a hospital. And he was like, you love beauty. I watch your YouTube channel. You love doing makeup. Why don't you find a career there? And at the time I had no idea what careers existed in beauty, but at Berkeley, there was a beauty club for girls who were interested in the industry. And they would bring in guests and we would just kind of learn about what functions were available. So I met someone who came and spoke about her role at this biotechnology company and connected with her. And after grad, there was a role on LinkedIn that opened at the company. And I emailed her and I was like, I'd love to interview. And that was my first role in beauty. I did product development at a biotechnology company for clean skincare. So that introduced me to the whole world of cosmetic formulation. I made everything from skincare to sun care to hair care to makeup. And so really learned all of it. But the challenge was always that I couldn't wear the products that the brands that I worked for were developing. So it's like, this is such a cool thing. Look at this fun package. Look at this fun campaign. I wish I could wear it. And if I wore it, I would break out really heavily. So the question became, what can I do with everything that I've learned to solve this problem that I have and so many other girls have so that we can wear makeup and feel safe wearing it? And if I'm going to make makeup that doesn't make us break out, why don't I take it a step further and make makeup that actively improves our skin health? So that's what I set out with Biotech Beauty to do.
Hold up. You had a YouTube channel before?
Yeah, it was teeny tiny. This was in the era of like, you remember like the Fenty duo highlighters, like the pink and orange one, and then like the Huda eyeshadows. It was just that fun, like 2016 makeup. And so every time something dropped, I would buy it. I would do a tutorial on myself. I would show how to do it on friends. I would kind of give ingredient breakdowns. So it was really fun for me. And that was what I woke up looking forward to doing. And so that's how my dad just really knew, like, that's what excites me. I should find something to do in that field.
I love that. Okay, this is like news to us. I've known you for a little while now, but I never knew about this YouTube channel.
I keep it a secret. It's kind of like a little cringe, but it was my origin story.
No, I mean, but that must have been fun. And honestly, 2016 was a time to do it. So, you're talking about products that were breaking you out. Was there any product in particular? Because like when I look at your skin today and think of you having acne.
I know, right?
One and one is not making two.
Thank you. Thank you. It has been such a journey. And I wish I could say there was one villain product that like did me in. But the truth is, if that was the case, I would have just not used it, right? The truth is, it was like death by 1,000 cuts. It was every product would cause breakouts. And it was the feeling over time of getting disappointed and let down by the empty promises of these new brands that eventually made me feel like I wanted to do something, right? So over the past 10, 15 years, we've seen the skinification of makeup. Everyone's doing hyaluronic acid or a foundation that has niacinamide, but it's not actually in there at effective levels to support your skin. And so it was not just the disappointment from products not working, but it was that added level of disappointment because you really hoped that this time it marketed it this way, so it's going to do something different for me. So after being let down so many times and having all of this education and experience in the industry, I knew that I could do something better for those girls that are so hopeful to affect a change in their skin. And so that's what sparked it for me.
That's something that you mentioned that I feel like so many consumers don't realize is that all of these like skincare infused products, the amount of skincare that's in them is nothing. Like it's really not going to do much for the skin.
Right, exactly. It's typically in there, if you see like made with, formulated with, it's in there at 0.001%. One way you can check is, as you guys know, you look at the bottom of the Inky, it's going to be like the very last ingredients. It's just sprinkled in there so that you can claim it on the marketing. And a lot of the time you'll see kind of the sneaky verbiage of it has this ingredient, which is known to. And so that's kind of their way of saying, hey, like we hope that you'll think that it's doing this, even though we can't claim that it does this. So one way that I try to educate consumers on knowing whether something is in there at efficacious levels is, one, some brands will include a percentage. So kind of like the Paula's Choice 2%, you're like, okay, that's in an effective concentration. The other way is they'll do clinical trials on the finished formula to actually show that, okay, we had these hydrating ingredients. This is the clinical results that show the hydration.
There's a group of people within like the beauty industry who view these kind of like hybrid products, skincare and makeup, as a marketing thing because they're worried about how it can actually like penetrate skin.
Yeah.
So for you as someone who actually like formulates products, like how this stuff works.
Yeah.
How does that mechanically actually like work with makeup? Because presumably makeup's sitting on top of your skincare.
Especially because I've also seen products and their whole thing is like that the product doesn't settle into the skin.
Yeah.
It blurs the pores. It doesn't sink into the pores. It doesn't sink into the fine lines. And that's the goal of the product.
Yeah. If it can deliver in a skincare product, it can deliver in a makeup product, right? Sometimes the format does change, right? For example, a powder might not be able to deliver as much actives as a liquid or a cream, which is why for us, we do a lot of these creams because the oils are able to help the actives penetrate a lot better. The other part of what I actually thought you were going to say is a lot of people have questioned, like, why do we need makeup to have skincare? Our skincare does our skincare. What does our makeup need? Well, our makeup sits on our skin for 10, 12 hours a day. And if it's causing these occlusive properties or if it's causing breakouts, it's reversing all of our skincare. So I like to look at makeup as an extension of skincare.
So what are some of the ingredients that you're looking at that complement everyday makeup routines? Because it's not just going on immediately after other skincare products. It's typically probably going on after a sunscreen.
I wanted to make sure that the skincare benefits that we're offering are helpful for everyone, right? So I don't want to be like, this is an acne treatment or this is for dark spots only. So what do consumers all want, right? They want a healthy skin barrier. They want a balanced microbiome. Everyone can benefit from that no matter what age or skin concerns you have. So those are the actives that we include. So they're all skin compatible no matter what skincare routine you have or what concerns you have, because we're basically replacing the building blocks of your skin barrier that you just naturally lose as you age. So we have ceramides, squalane, polypeptides. We're really just focused on rebuilding the skin barrier so your skin can be naturally more resilient.
Would you ever consider doing SPF products like infused in makeup? Because I feel like that almost feels like the natural next step, right? Because it's like you're already doing these things that are supposed to strengthen your barrier. It's already sitting on top of your skincare. My follow-up question to that is, because you actually formulate things, like how hard is it to actually infuse SPF into makeup? Because I would feel like at this point, every brand would do that, but it's not really a thing. Very few brands effectively do it.
Yes, actually the first product I ever wanted to create was an SPF. One thing that this will be a theme throughout the whole podcast, when I create something, and this is something I took away from my research background, when I create something, I need for it to be done the right way according to the scientific method and according to how we're going to validate all of our claims and present it to the consumers. And after doing a lot of research, I found that if we were to properly launch a whole new custom SPF formulation, it would cost close to $100,000. And that's for everything from the custom development to doing the proper SPF testing, because I would want to make sure it's done among multiple labs. The reason that a lot of brands don't do hybrids right now is because there's a lot of complexity that goes into getting the true claims validated. What you'll see is actually a lot of brands, I'm not going to call out any names throughout this episode, but a lot of makeup brands claim SPF on their products. And there's two paths to this. Well, there's three paths. One is they do it correctly and they've done the testing, which we love. The other paths are, one, they get a stock formula from a manufacturer, and this is like maybe already a skin tint that has SPF in it, and then they trust that they've done the homework, so they claim it that way. The other way is a lot of brands will actually claim an SPF and they don't actually have the testing surround it. And we've seen in so many cases when they get sent out for testing by a third party or someone who's kind of auditing them, the SPF is so much lower, but consumers don't know. Consumers don't know to be like, hey, show me the paperwork that you actually did this testing. They just see a foundation that says SPF 50 and they're like, wow, that's great, I'm protected. So for me, I've seen a lot of this in the industry, and I know that if I wanted to create something, I want to do it the correct way, and it would be very costly. So I want to wait until we're at a position where it's financially smart for us to take on that endeavor.
So that $100,000 is like just for one product to test it, like to basically get it to like SPF ready.
So the caveat here is, for our products, they're not only going to be SPF, but they're going to be skincare makeup hybrids as well, right? So I want to do the clinical testing that not only shows that it's giving you the skincare benefits. For us, the story is skin barrier and microbiome testing that we need. It also needs to perform as makeup, and it needs to perform as sun care. So for us, for it to perform on all three pillars, which I would refuse to compromise on, it would end up costing close to that amount.
That's a lot.
It is a lot. Yeah. It's mostly the clinicals that gets it there.
And I feel like this whole kind of notion of like clinical testing, clinical studies when it comes to skincare and makeup, in your case, it has a lot of like misconceptions, I would say, right? Like people don't really know what it means. There are a lot of brands out there that use this phrase as just like a marketing gimmick.
Yeah.
So how would you break it down? What are you guys doing? And a follow-up to that is like, what are some ways that brands might be tricking you with this kind of language?
Yeah. We do see a lot of brands claiming clinical now. When you go into retail, almost all of them have clinical. And I'm like, I was really excited when I first saw it. I was like, wow, it's like the game is changing. Everyone's doing their homework. And then you read the fine print and it was like, okay, cool. So you did a consumer perception panel on 15 people, and they might have even worked within your company. Who knows? So we're seeing a lot of people touting this scientific language, almost this bit of science washing. And when you are educated, which I hope this is what we're able to do with this podcast, is educate people on what do you really need to look for to know if the science was sound. The thing to look for is what was the protocol? What was the scientific study? You need to look at what is the number of participants in the study? Were the results statistically significant? Who did they include? Who did they exclude, right? Traditionally, clinical studies are done on the fairest skin type, on women. And if you're doing that, but then all of a sudden on your campaign imagery, you're using people of all skin tones and you're saying this is universal, well, you're probably going to disappoint a lot of people who this product is not going to affect results for. So a couple ways that clinical testing can be done. The first way is probably the most common because it is the least expensive and least involved. That's the consumer perception panels. That's essentially a survey where you send the product to a certain group of people. You say, does your skin feel healthier? Do you feel like your skin is glowier? And if they say yes, 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 cool. 100% of our participants felt that their skin is glowier and healthier. I think there is some value to that because it's almost like customer reviews. It's kind of nice to see customer reviews and think like, okay, some people thought this. But what I think is a lot stronger is having objective instrument-based studies. So this is where you can have instruments that measure before and after using the product. And it's a lot more objective and measurable. So for example, for us, we have transepidermal loss measurements. We have microbiome sequencing to show how the microbiome shifts over time. And then the third way is called clinical grading. That's where you have an expert who's in there looking at the skin before and after and giving a grade on a scale of how much something improved in terms of brightness or evenness or tone. So there's a lot of different types of clinical testing that's available, and it's really important for brands to be transparent, honestly, about what their methodology was, what their results were, if they're going to be claiming it.
You mentioned like the consumer perception testing, and like I've seen it so many times where it's like 100% of people felt like their skin was stronger, healthier, whatever. You look at like how many people are in this study. 15 to 20. Like
20, right.
No, and it's wild because like the brands that are using the 15 to 20, these are big brands.
Big box
These
brands.
are Sephora brands. And yeah, anytime I see those, I always just assume that it was done with their own team. Like, you know, they probably have 15 people on their marketing team.
Yeah.
But yeah, and it's also when I see the consumer perception studies, in my opinion, it's also like a lot of times in those situations, people are getting product for free to review something and to give their feedback. And I don't know, I would want to keep getting free product.
Exactly.
You know,
bias.
so
Yeah.
It's
I think that
totally
there's
biased.
immediate bias.
100%.
And so when you're talking about microbiome, what is a microbiome for your skin? Like, is that what's causing acne, or like what role does that have to play?
Yeah. So the microbiome is a living ecosystem on your skin, and it's comprised of bacteria and fungi and viruses, and it works in symbiosis to make sure that your skin is healthy and functioning the way that it should be. So the time that we'll see some dysbiosis or imbalance is when you'll typically see acne and eczema start to arise. So what we want to do with our makeup is just support the skin barrier and the microbiome so that your own skin maintains its own resilience. We're not harming the beneficial bacteria. And if anything, we're reducing the harmful bacteria.
This is our signature. Marry, kill your outfit, your makeup, and your hair.
Okay. Marry the makeup, obviously.
Yes.
F the outfit. I love a good fit. And for me, hair.
You're killing your gorgeous hair.
Yeah, guys, my hair, I'm okay if I'm like short on time. Some girls are like, I'm going to do the hair, makeup like last. Makeup will be last. For me, makeup has to be done. The hair can then go in a slick back. Or if I'm going to Pilates, it goes in that ratty like bun. I'm not one of those girls that has to have like a perfect bun. I'm not great at hair. As I told you, I don't really know how to do a lot of styles. So I'm like, as long as the makeup's good.
That's all they know.
All right. And our final question. When you are 90 years old and have lived a full life, what is one piece of advice you would give to your younger self?
Yeah. I would say to never feel like any experience or endeavor is wasted time. I think growing up, I always worried, like if I'm pre-med and now I go in beauty, did I just waste all that time? If I'm now a product developer and I want to do product marketing, did I just waste that time? If I got into the biggest beauty company in the world and now I'm going to try to build my own company, did I just waste all this time? Like, why am I choosing all these different things? And then when I look back, I realized that all of my disparate interests and experiences helped me create something so special with such a unique point of view. So I like to remind myself of that every time I feel like, oh, I'm changing my mind or changing direction. It's because I've learned more about what I like and don't like and what I'm good at and what I'm not good at. And so it always makes me stronger. And so I try to think of it that way rather than thinking like, oh, I'm pivoting And is it potentially a waste of time?
Finally, a unique answer to that question.
I know. I was actually thinking that same thing.
Like literally everyone always comes on here and I know that they mean it, but they're just like, stress less, love yourself. And I'm just like, you know what I mean?
Or like everything happens for a reason. Which also, like, I do believe
those are all true.
They're really true.
They're true, but yours is good.
Yeah.
Thank you. I mean, I hear all those all the time and I really do believe them, but I get this question a lot from, I like to go back to college campuses and kind of like share the story because I know how I felt at that time and how scared I was to go from being pre-med to working in beauty or being in the lab and going into marketing. I'm like, oh, is it a waste of time? Or what if I don't like it? That's the hardest part is like, what if I make a leap and I decide I don't like it? And I like to tell people, well, then you've learned something. You're still a step up and you learned something. You can always go back or you can always go sideways, but it's never a waste of time.
I 1,000% agree. As someone who has pivoted my career a couple times and like I've talked to younger girls and guys about like just career stuff, I always tell them like, don't freak out. You're just learning a new skill.
Exactly.
And guess what? A lot of people don't have that skill. So be happy.
Yeah, it's kind of like the whole, like your life is chapters in a book, not just one thing. So, you know, the chapters make you interesting.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It makes you so much more multifaceted. It's a lot more interesting to have someone on the team that has this diverse skill set rather than the one education into industry pipeline.
Right. Yeah. Although it's always great to have a good skill and be an expert.
Totally.
Yeah. But don't want to be a master of none.
Exactly. But well, thank you so much. This was so much fun.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been such a dream to be on the pod, so I really appreciate you having me.
Of course. And then Alanna, lastly, where can people find you, Biotech Beauty?
Yeah. So you can find us on our website at biotechbeautyus.com, as well as in stores at Credo Beauty in all the major cities. And then keep an eye out on our socials and we'll be expanding to more retail later this year.
Exciting.
Oh my God, I can't wait.